It's now my privilege to introduce our board member, John Malcolm. He's Vice President of the Edwin Meese III Institute for the Rule of Law at Advancing American Freedom. John, thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, John Levy is always a tough act to follow, so I won't really try. So as you heard, I'm on the LSC board. It's both a pleasure and a privilege to serve on that board. So supporting veterans is a critical part of LSC's mission, and I'm very proud to have co-chaired, along with Abby Kuzma, LSC's Veterans Task Force, which is now in its 5th year. The legal challenges facing veterans are as vast as they are varied. And they can, of course, show up at any time during the course of a veteran's life. Last year alone, Legal Services Corporation grantees across the country served 44,000 veterans with issues such as housing loss, family safety, income stability. And in just a few moments, you're going to hear from a very distinguished panel of speakers who are going to delve into the issue, and they are going to be moderated, I'm quite sure expertly so, by LSC's General Counsel, Will Gunn. So Will, take it away.
Make sure you get your mouth next to this.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's also a pleasure and an honor to talk about a subject that is near and dear to my heart. 16 years ago, I was serving as the General Counsel for the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. And at that point, under the leadership of the then Secretary, Eric K. Shinseki, he set as his goal ending veterans' homelessness. Various people said that that was a crazy goal to have, especially in this city, where you're measured all the time by your words. And they encouraged him to do things such as, why don't you set as a goal substantially reducing veterans' homelessness? But he said something that has stayed with me, and that is, I would much rather be guilty of going after a bridge too far than not doing everything in my power to end this national stain. This issue of ending veterans' homelessness is closely related, closely tied to our theme today, and that is providing legal assistance to veterans. You see, each year, the Department of Veterans Affairs does a survey. That survey, under the name of Project Challenge, looks at what is the Department of Veterans Affairs doing well with respect to homeless veterans and those who are at risk of homelessness and those things that we're not doing well. Unfortunately, consistently, meeting legal needs falls to the top of that list. In fact, legal needs dominate the top 10 list of things that we as Americans are not doing well. So we're fortunate today to have with us a panel that can talk about what can we do as Americans to protect our promise of providing access to justice for those who have served. I'd like to call up for us members of our distinguished panel today. And as they're coming up, I'd like to just mention we have with us, closest to me, Laura Tuggle, who is the Executive Director of Southeast Louisiana Legal Services. Laura brings the perspective of a legal aid leader one who has been working to identify community needs and ensure that veterans receive the services and support that they need. In fact, I'm going to talk more about a subject that Laura and her team played a key role in just a moment. Next to Laura, we have Pi Young. Pi is the managing attorney at Bay Area Legal Services, which is headquartered in the Tampa Bay area, Florida. Pi works directly with veterans and leads outreach efforts designed to connect veterans with legal help and other community resources. Then, while I'm tempted to say I'm calling upon a former Marine, but the reality is that once a Marine, always a Marine. And we have with us Nick Hassenfuss. Nick is a Marine Corps veteran and is now a partner at Holland and Knight in Boston. He's also a member of LSC's Leaders Council and served on our Veterans Task Force. Throughout his legal career, Nick has helped organize and has participated in legal clinics serving veterans. He's also worked with the ABA and various veterans organizations to highlight the importance of civil legal services for veterans. Now, as John mentioned, I am a veteran myself. I'm an Air Force veteran. And the Air Force, we have a slogan that flexibility is the key to air power. We have to be flexible today. You see, we were going to have a film, but we didn't get the audio visual support. Someone didn't get the memo. So just to tell you about a little bit about the film that we're going to have, if it were here, you'd hear a veteran tell his own story. That veteran, by the name of Larry Savage, was 70 years old when he got a notice from the Department of Veterans Affairs saying that you owe over $50,000. $52,000. And if you don't pay this right away, we're not only going to garnish your VA benefits, but we're going to take your Social Security benefits as well. Larry said, if you do that, I'm going to be homeless. But he called upon Laura's organization, Southeast Louisiana Legal Services. And the lawyers on Laura's team made a difference. He was able to keep his benefits. He was able to keep his housing. Just telling you just a little bit about the important work that's being done. With that in mind, I just want to shift for a moment, Laura, and call upon you with respect to this. From your vantage point there in Louisiana, are there times that these issues come to light? Is there a particular time that you see this in operation?
Well, we've been working on providing, hold on, flexible.
There you go.
Okay, I got it. We've been working on behalf of vulnerable veterans in Southeast Louisiana in our program for almost a decade now. And that really started out as something that was 3 different factors coming together. You mentioned the goal of the VA to end veterans' homelessness. That was happening when we really started looking at this work. We also were looking at the fact that in Louisiana, we have 36% of our veterans that are considered ALICE, which is a United Way term, which stands for Asset Limited Income Constrained Yet Employed. Really rolls off the tongue there. And though we don't have the most veterans of any state, we had the highest pro rata percentage of ALICE veterans, 36% of all veterans in Louisiana. And across the country, the lowest it goes down to is 21% in Wisconsin. So that's nothing to be proud of, and definitely not keeping the promises that we're trying to talk about today. And then thirdly, we had a situation where the New Orleans Bar Foundation came to us and said, hey, we want to raise some money for you guys. What's one of your most urgent needs? And we said, we want to do a better job of serving veterans. And so those things kind of all came together for us. And that was the very beginning of the work, which we've been able to expand. And one of the things for us where issues really pop up for veterans, I'm usually here talking about disasters in rooms like this. But whenever there is a disaster, the percentage of veterans that seek our services to resolve issues around FEMA benefits or housing or evictions or all those kind of issues that percolate up, we have a 750% increase in veterans seeking our services after the last couple of disasters. So that is definitely something that we're really aware of in our state.
Thanks, Laura. Nick, from your experience, what do civil legal needs actually look like for veterans? And when do they tend to arise? Just after they get out, or is there any particular time?
Yeah, that's a good question, Will. You mentioned the VA challenge survey, and I just want to focus on that as well. And the 2024 survey found that 7 of the top 10 needs of homeless veterans were legal assistance. And a 2021 LSC Justice Gap survey found that 76% of low-income veteran households had at least one civil legal problem during the 1-year measurement period. It also found that 44% had 5 or more civil legal problems. And that survey also found that low-income veteran households did not receive enough or any legal help for 84% of their civil legal problems. And I think that just helps highlight that veterans can face civil legal issues at any time. And, I like to put them in 3 broad categories. 1, VA benefits. Folks are generally, familiar with VA benefits and that veterans can receive VA benefits. It's not as easy as one might think it should be, and it takes a lot of work. And as Will talked about the story, that sometimes there's issues once you receive VA benefits, like overpayment issues. Those were prevalent years ago and are starting to slow down a little. Another one is discharge upgrades. So veterans have a discharge status. Folks usually have heard of an honorable discharge and a dishonorable discharge. There's a bunch in between. And the discharge status, it does a few different things, but one of the biggest things is it can entitle you to certain benefits. If you have a dishonorable discharge, you're not going to be eligible for, VA disability benefits, the GI Bill, the VA home loan program, all those hallmarks of the things that we're doing for veterans. And that makes sense if you have a dishonorable discharge and it's warranted. But there's also all sorts of discharge statuses in between honorable and dishonorable. And what we've seen a lot of, and there's been a lot of change from really great work from folks, is that veterans with PTSD or PTSD resulting from MST, military sexual trauma, are discharged with discharge statuses that don't really make sense because they had conduct related to, their mental health conditions that occurred in service. So there's a lot of work going on to upgrade those discharges. We call them typically discharge upgrade petitions. So those veterans, will be able to receive the benefits that they're entitled to, which I think really ties directly to reflecting on the promise of justice for veterans. And then the third category is what I just call civil legal issues veterans face. And that's, issues that we all have that are civil legal issues, can be housing, family law, employment, expungement of records, all sorts of things that now veterans are facing.
Thanks, Nick. Pi, building on that, how do these issues tend to show up in the lives of veterans? And as I understand it from our past conversation, there are times that you confront or you encounter veterans who don't even know that they have a legal issue. They just know they have an issue.
That's exactly correct. A lot of times when we think about assisting veterans, we think about the big ticket items, some of which Nick has outlined, a discharge upgrade. But a discharge upgrade takes some time. So what is the nature of the veteran's life in the meantime, in between time? How can we assist? There's a lot of different options. There's like a character of service evaluation where if that veteran doesn't have access to medical care, we can at least get them some interim services. A lot of times when we encounter veterans, they are coming to our clinics or our medical legal partnership for one reason. It is important that our team and our advocates and our paralegals listen to what the veteran is saying and what the veteran is not saying. Oftentimes, when we have a crisis issue, we look at the big crisis and we don't look at some of the supplemental things that have led to this crisis. And so, with informed advocacy, right, with being an attorney who listens to the veteran and listens in between the lines, like I tell my team, we can categorize a lot of those issues. So discharge upgrade and discharge status might be one, but the other issue that's underlying is that has a direct impact on benefits that I'm not receiving. It could have a direct impact on the income that you're not receiving, right? Or other benefits that you're not receiving because of your status. But then there's other things, quality of housing, right? Limited income often equals limited quality of housing. We're looking at, what are the other things that are going on in your life? Do you have access to your children? And so from that conversation typically yields multifaceted issues, and then we're able to triage what's the crisis issue and what are the underlying issues. And a lot of that comes from just having the conversation and listening to what the needs are without telling the veteran, this is what we're going to do for you, right? We need to listen and to hear what their needs truly are.
Pi, if you could, you mentioned a term that I don't believe everyone is familiar with, and that's medical legal partnership.
Yes.
Can you just explain what that is and why it matters?
So a medical legal partnership is essentially where legal services partners with typically a moderate to low income healthcare facility. In our case, it is the VA. In 2017, this concept started at the VA basically as a novelty, right? And it's like, well, we'll put some legal aid attorneys on site and see what happens. But it's deeper than just having a legal clinic on site. A medical legal partnership is where legal service advocates and their support team is embedded in the medical facility. In our case, it's the Bay Pines VA in our region. And from 2017 until now, we've been able to grow our medical legal partnership legal clinics from 1 location to 7 locations in a 5-county service area. How do we do that? It's relationship building. We talk about it all the time in the work that we do. So that we build a relationship with the social work team in our VAs, because a lot of times those are the people who are encountering the veterans and their needs first. So we build a relationship with the social work team. We build a relationship with the healthcare team. We build a relationship with different departments throughout the VA so that when there is a need that is beyond what social work can meet, they know automatically we can contact legal services. A lot of times I talk about this concept of warm referrals. If we give a client or a veteran a piece of paper and we say, okay, call this number and let's see if someone answers and gets help, versus You're the social worker, I'm the advocate. You call over to me and say, hey, I have a client here. I can't disclose any information. However, I'm going to refer them to you. Can you meet with them? Can you talk to them? That's going to bridge the gap of services for our veterans. They're already dealing with a lot of things. The medical legal partnership model is more than just a clinic on site. It is a relationship, and we've been able to develop this relationship with the VA over the past 9 years. And it is not just germane or unique to Tampa Bay or the Bayvines VA and Bay Area Legal Services. It is a national model that we hope to see continue to grow.
Thanks, Pi. Laura, the two words just jumped out at me in terms of what Pi was just saying: relationship, partnership. In your organization, Southeast Louisiana Legal Services, how have you approached building these relationships and partnerships? And why does that matter?
It matters because you're not going to be able to effectively serve veterans or really anybody else unless you're building the trust. And when we started doing that work, focused on veterans, initially we started doing this work from at what we called at that time our homeless unit, because this was coming at us from a place of, in part, ending veterans homelessness. And right about the time that we were considering how are we going to do this, what's the best way, somebody thought, oh, wait, the VA hospital, which has been closed down since Hurricane Katrina, is about to reopen 10 years later in 2015. And so we went and had a conversation with the VA, and we thought it was going to be a hard conversation, and they were kind of like, come on in. This is a service we don't provide, and we want, we had to get past the, are you going to sue us for medical malpractice and all those kind of things. And we're not. But it was a very easy conversation to have and a very welcoming approach. And one of the very first things we learned was that if we expected veterans to want to have anything to do with us, yes, we have all these needs, but there are serious trust issues, maybe some bad experiences with the legal system before. And if you call yourself the homeless unit, veterans do not want to receive services, at least that's what we found. So we changed our name for that department to the Veterans and Innovative Projects Unit, the VIP unit, and started having a lot more folks either access us on site at the VA when we really got going. We've expanded from 1 location to 6 locations now, and are in multiple different parishes throughout Southeast Louisiana. One other thing that we think is really important too, besides the medical legal model, and Pi alluded to this, part of that building trust and reliability is you have to go to where the veterans are. If you think that folks are going to traipse down to your downtown office where there's no parking and, it's inconvenient, yes, that happens sometimes, but you really need to try to figure out how do we remove those barriers. And sometimes that's being at the VA, but sometimes veterans, unfortunately, might not have the best experience always at the VA, and maybe there's a different partner. So we've been working with an organization in New Orleans recently called The Bastion, which is a mixed income housing complex which has some units set aside for veterans with traumatic brain injuries and other types of disabilities that veterans are living with. And they are about to open a wellness center to try to provide supportive services beyond just the veterans who are on site there. And that center is about to open up, and next month we're actually doing our first expungement clinic exclusively for veterans. We also have some partnership with veterans treatment courts in Louisiana. We have 3 in our service area. And so that is, each kind of group or subset of veterans that we're working with, yes, there's some similarities, but some veterans are more likely to have certain types of legal issues than necessarily maybe like a Vietnam War era veteran. So it's really about where are the partnerships? Where can you connect with veterans? How do you make people feel comfortable? And a big component on the medical legal partnership is we also have to be regularly training the staff, whether it's the parking lot attendant guy who is talking to veterans all the time, or whether it's the doctor or the social worker or the case manager, because there's always a lot of turnover. So a big part of it is every so often, you've got to train your partners about who we are, and those folks that are helping support veterans also often don't realize that a problem a veteran's experiencing may have a legal solution. So that's a really important part too.
I'll jump in there, Laura. I tell you about the training. We always say, when in doubt, refer. Right? Don't take it upon yourself to decipher whether or not they have a legal need. Just refer it, and we'll talk it through, and then we'll see if we can assist.
Pi, both you and Laura, again, touching on this issue of relationships and partnerships. One of the things that I've heard, well, one of the things I know, is that women, in particular amongst veterans, that is the fastest growing cohort of people that formerly served in the military. But women don't always identify with the term veteran in and of itself. So how does that play out if you are dealing with somebody trying to help, but they don't even understand the terminology that you're using?
So that's actually a really great point. I'm glad that you brought that up, because a lot of times it's not just the women veterans that don't identify, it's just people in general. We have this concept, right? But it's important that we are very targeted, specific, deliberate to build relationships with women veterans, to build relationships with the women veterans departments through our VAs and through our community organizations that support women veterans. A lot of times we'll get a client that calls in, and during the screening or the intake, we determine that this client that is called in is also a veteran. But they didn't highlight that. They didn't call in for veterans-related services. And so we will put them in our veterans unit, but it's important that they also have the identity of equality, access, entitlement to all rights that any other veteran has. And so sometimes, as Nick mentioned, there are things that happen in the military that certain veterans and a lot of our women veterans don't want to have a conversation about again. And the reality of that is that we now make sure that the relationship is there, the trust is there. And if they don't want to address that, that's okay, right? There may be other needs, but we have got to make sure that we are present, that we are building relationships with social workers, with departments who provide services to women veterans. In fact, one of our funders that Laura and I share is Department of Veterans Affairs. One of our requirements for that funding is that we have a certain percentage of assistance that's directly put towards women veterans, their needs and their services. And that is very important, often overlooked, but extremely important. Thank you for highlighting that.
Certainly. Nick, you come at this not from the legal aid perspective, but you're a partner in a large law firm. So how do free legal clinics and other pro bono services work in or fit into this idea of providing legal services to veterans?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Will. And at Holland and Knight, I've been overseeing our military and veteran pro bono since 2016. I just pulled up the numbers. We've done 51,500 plus hours, valued at over 35.8 million in that time span. And I just say that because the private bar, particularly big law, we have resources that folks can use, and we're happy to do those things. But it's a little bit harder for us to get involved when you're part of the private bar. And I say that because when you think about the legal issues that a lot of veterans are facing that we talked about earlier, it might not be the things that big law attorneys are practicing. My practice area is IP licensing and technology transactions, but I do a lot of veterans work because I've learned about it, I'm passionate about it, and that's very important to me and the firm. And one of the things that I would say freaks out private bar attorneys is to, get over their skis in a practice area that they're not familiar with. So things like legal clinics can be really helpful for participation of private bar attorneys, particularly if it's about a subset of law that they know something about. So maybe you have a bankruptcy team that wants to help with, bankruptcy issues and other types of credit issues. And that's something that they do as part of their private practice and can easily transfer. Clinics are also great for in-house attorneys. So a lot of times in-house attorneys, if you're at a company and you're hired by that company to be a lawyer, you might not be able to send out an engagement letter to set up an attorney-client relationship. So by being able to participate in a clinic, and if that clinic, is sponsored by a legal aid organization that has malpractice insurance that's covering the clinic, now all those folks are covered and they're, a lot less freaked out. And those folks that maybe can't engage clients directly outside of their organization can now participate and give back. The other thing that's really helpful for the private bar is legal aid partnerships with great legal aid organizations like the ones here that we're discussing, and those organizations that can provide training and mentorship to the private bar attorneys that maybe aren't as familiar with the cases. So some of them, like expunging criminal records. Most, big firm attorneys don't do that as a day-to-day practice. But with some training and some mentorship, we certainly have the resources and the ability to do it. We just want to make sure that we're able to ask questions when they come up. The other thing that I think the private bar is great for is like impactful matters that take a lot of time. So, Will, you mentioned the ABA. I was in the ABA Standing Committee for Legal Assistance for Military Personnel, which I know you're the chair of now. And, Holland and Knight helped write several proposed resolutions and present them, and those can take hundreds of hours to do. And again, the private bar is here with those resources to help out. And finally, what I think we will all can comment on is once you start doing good work, veterans tell other veterans, and you start getting all sorts of calls from all their friends, and that feels great. It feels great when a veteran client tells you like, "Hey, I just gave your card to 10 different people at my VA clinic." But that's good because, as you've heard, it can sometimes be hard to get that trust with the veteran that's experiencing legal issues. If a veteran's had a great experience and is telling his veteran buddies, and now we can help a bunch, you're just building the trust pretty naturally that way.
So I've gotten a signal telling me that we're now in our speed round. And so with respect to that, people hear statistics, but stories meet their hearts. And so from a story perspective, does anybody have anything that they'd like to share that's really burning at them that this audience needs to hear?
I want to tell you a little bit about Robert. Robert was a 54-year-old double amputee on disability benefits, a formerly homeless veteran. And he actually, when he got off the street, he went to a rural area. But this particular area was served by one of our medical legal partnership locations through the VA. And he got connected with us. One of those case managers at the VA recognized, hey, I don't know exactly what's going on, but Robert's food stamps are about to get cut off. And once we looked at the issue, what was going on, which is fairly common, is Robert had multiple interrelated legal issues stemming from, it turned out, being the victim of identity theft. someone was working on a goat farm in Florida.
To Florida.
Who had taken on his identity, his social security number. Meanwhile, this gentleman is living in Livingston Parish in rural Louisiana, hanging out a lot on his front porch, talking to his neighbors. And we ended up figuring out what was going on after calling the goat farmer guy and figuring out that this was definitely an identity fraud situation. So we were able to get an administrative hearing and stop his food stamps from being cut off. But then because he was on benefits, it was going to get reported that there was earned income, so we had to try to head that off before it became another issue. And then we realized after we solved those two issues, wait a minute, the same data about income is probably also going to get reported to the IRS. And so we ended up helping Robert with like multiple legal issues. But for the fact that that case manager said, hey, maybe legal aid can help you with your food stamps. A lot of people might not have ever thought of that. We were able to keep Robert housed and keep Robert fed. So that was pretty fantastic. But an everyday issue that happens with a lot of veterans. Oh, thank you. I didn't do it myself. That was my team.
Yes. Do we have time for another quick?
Hi, I'm not even looking up, so you need to go ahead.
All right, so I'll quickly share. We, of course, have tons of stories, right? So I'll share one that is near and dear to our hearts in Florida because of our natural disasters. And LSC has also prioritize disaster relief, especially in areas like Florida, and we have an entire disaster relief team at Bay Area Legal. So we had a veteran that came in, and they were thinking that they were just having a regular eviction, like, oh, I've fallen behind. But the eviction stemmed from like fees, right? They lived in a mobile home. There was damage to their mobile home that was not repaired, so they were being fined. And then they had fallen behind on lot rent. And, it kind of was cumulative. The veteran had been in the hospital, and just life had gotten in the way. And so what happened is, in essence, is that the veteran did receive money to repair some of the damage to their mobile home unit, paid a contractor. This is where looking below the surface really does make a difference. Paid a contractor to repair the damage, and the contractor took the money and never did the work. So here is a veteran in crisis mode, right? We talk about crises. And so it wasn't a traditional eviction. It was there was a reason. There was a good reason for this. And so, of course, the veteran was trying to call and get this done, and they were out of the money. And so we were able to get involved. We were able to notify the sheriff's department to make a few phone calls and do some investigation on this contractor. And long story short, I'll cut some of the details, but the contractor did come out and do the work. We were able to negotiate with the mobile home park to allow for additional time. This is the power of advocacy. A lot of times when our clients come in, they've gone toe to toe with the landlord or the mobile home park, and they're not getting anywhere. Enter the attorney. Right? And the tone of the conversation just changes. And that is the power of advocacy on behalf of our clients. And so essentially, he was able to get his mobile home unit repaired. He was able to remain in his mobile home, and his housing was preserved. And so that is just a portion of the type of work that we do. We handle consumer issues, identity fraud cases, sealing and expungement. We talked about that a little bit, in addition to the big ticket veterans issues like discharge upgrades or pension or garnishment issues. And so we try to gather as many good outcome stories because it's good for people to know that the work that we do does have a significant impact on the lives of veterans.
And I'm going to jump. I'm going to jump in with a story before Will tells me I don't have time. I'm not even going to ask if we have time. But this is related to the power of advocacy. I like that phrase, Pi. It's much better than what I usually say is the power of letterhead. But, yours is way better, but I appreciate that. So one of my clients was a Vietnam era veteran, and this sort of talks about when do civil legal issues pop up. This was about 4 years ago. He was a prisoner of war in Vietnam, someone that, almost, or I would think every person here in the room would want to support. And he was on a month-to-month lease for about 10 years, and his landlord said, "Hey, that's it, time to get out." He said to the landlord, "Hey, can I just stay here 3 more months so my daughter can finish the school year?" The landlord said, "Absolutely not. And by the way, you owe about $5,000 in damages because, the apartment doesn't look like it did when I rented it to you 10 years ago." Shocking. So, we got involved, and, immediately with the power of advocacy, the tone just changed. And, to cut to the chase here, we ended up securing at least 4 months for the veteran at the apartment so he could, his daughter could finish the school year. We arranged for a veteran-friendly unit inspection from a third-party contractor, advised him very carefully of the details, and all the damages were found to be wear and tear over 10 years. Again, power of advocacy. And then the best part of this story is that I found another agency that helped with his moving expenses, Easter Seals. They were awesome. And we were able to help him use the VA home loan so he could buy his very first house.
Beautiful. You've heard it. Interconnected. Relationships matter. Partnerships making the difference. And the power of advocacy, or of letterhead. So can you please join me in thanking our panelists today?